You've tried to heal while being plugged in to the daily demands of life. But now, it's time for you to experience healing unplugged. Hey y'all, what's up? It's your girl Sunray welcoming you to episode 3 of the Healing Unplugged podcast. Today we are talking about lost but found. And I'm not gonna lie to you today. Sunray might cry. So make sure y'all get y'all tissues, because I know when somebody else cry, I start crying and it just be a whole crying party. But also, let's go over a few house rules. So some of you may know by now, but even if this is your first time tuning in, when I created Healing Unplugged, the purpose was to create a safe space for us to heal. We're so plugged into life. Sometimes we literally have to unplug from all the daily demands, whether you're a mother, a father, an entrepreneur, you work a job, whatever the case it is, we have to unplug, even ministry, right? Just unplug from it all and sit with God, but also sit with something that feeds our soul. And so my prayer is that today's session, that this episode, that it feeds your soul, but also more importantly, that you just get comfortable. So y'all already know how I am. I am currently sitting on the floor with my blanket. I actually have my PJs on today, because this, like I said, this episode is very, very raw and vulnerable for me. So I needed to make sure that I am as comfortable as can be. So if you want to join me in that, even if you're listening to the audio or you're watching a video version of this podcast on YouTube, go ahead and go put on your PJs, like put on something comfortable, get somewhere comfortable, because we have a lot to talk about today. And I'm so excited that you decided to join me. And so again, today we're talking about lost but found. And again, as I say always, this caught me by surprise, because I'm like, what, lost but found? And I'm like, wow, God, I was lost, but you found me. And I don't know how many of you out there can relate to that, where you can say, yes, Sunray, me too. I was lost, but the Lord found me. And I have some things written down, but I felt like this one was going to be very, 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 very just from the heart, 100%. So the first thing that I have written here is, so I gotta be real. I was adopted, and I feel like that's where it all started. Because growing up, being adopted, I had a different perspective of my situation then than I do now. Now, and even when I got older, let's say like high school, when I got to high school, I didn't think that way. But kids think differently than adults. And so, or a growing mind, a teenage mind. And so I always felt like I was missing something. And so my mother loved me, my father loved me, my adopted family loved me. They accepted me, right? Because they took me in. That's even what I think is Psalm 27:10. It says, even when my father and my mother like forsake me, God, you adopt me, like you take me in as one of your own, right? Like God, you don't abandon me. But I think that's where it all started. Is I felt like my child years, there was a large part of me that was missing. And I remember as I got older, I would ask my adopted mom questions about my birth mom. I would say like, who is she? I have some pictures and stuff, but there wasn't much that was said. And in a kid's perspective, I'm going to school and I'm hearing people talk about their mothers, their fathers. And I know that when I go home, these older people, because my parents were older, my adopted parents were a lot older, I'm like, they're old enough to be my grandparents. Like these are my parents, And so from a kid's perspective, I was like, I want to have the fun experiences that my friends and my classmates are having with their parents and their dads, or just how involved their parents were in school, because my parents were super old school, right? So I'm saying all of this to say there was always a void in me from the time that I grew up. Okay, so there was a void, and that void was always seeking something. And over the years, that translated into me seeking love, seeking acceptance, seeking to belong, right? And it played out in different ways. Different friendships I wanted to be a part of. It was that acceptance I was seeking. Being the smartest kid in my class. Like, I remember me and this guy, if I ever see him again, I can't wait to see him again because I know I will. But me and this guy at elementary school used to compete all the time. Like, we were like the smartest kids in the class. Maurice Nicholson. Like, yes, I'm putting his name out there because, yeah, Maurice Nicholson. We used to go at it, okay? Like, oh, what you get? What you get? What you get? What you get? And now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, wasn't he valedictorian of our like graduating class in middle school? I don't remember. I knew I was something, but I think I was second in line. What is it? The salutatorian? Salutatorian? Yeah. Salutatorian. Yeah, that's what it is. Sorry, y'all. I had to do that. I have a Latin background. Who takes Latin? But I took Latin for 4 years in high school. Plugging out for the people that took Latin that wanted to be a little bit different, study a dead language, know the roots of some words. But anywho, so it was like a competitive nature because it was like, well, if I'm the best, then people have no choice but to accept me, right? And then like the love, I felt like at a very young age, and it wasn't like my mom fostered this or like she made this happen. I think this was something I just naturally did because I felt like something was missing. I would almost overcompensate so that I could feel accepted, right? So, long story short, there was a void. And I had a relationship with God very young. And sometimes it's so crazy because it's like the things that we forget. Remember, I was the kid that was like, I'm finna sit and read for hours. Like that was my thing. Like I just remember I would just go to my room, get my favorite snacks, get my book and read for hours. Like, don't bug me. I would build, y'all know like how you have those science project boards, the trifold display boards. I would take my old science boards, stack them up. And then I had like an actual desk, like y'all know, like an old school student desk. I had an old school student desk in my room. So I would take a blanket or a sheet, and I would take it and create a canopy, like a tent inside the house. Take my little pillow in there, my snacks and my books, go in there for hours. Don't mess with me. And so the reason why I'm mentioning that is from a young age, I always had like this aptitude to just isolate, right? And so with that, as I guess the best way to say is like, as I grew older, it was just always that part of me that also like I'm fostering being isolated, but I still want to be accepted. But it was like I also understood that I was just so different. And so in that time of isolation was when my relationship with God was growing. Now, as a kid, like growing up, I didn't remember this part. But I used to listen to a lot of worship music, like this, that, and the third. Believe it or not, it wasn't until 2022 I went to a conference in Tomball, Texas. It was at Joan Hunter's Ministries. I went to a conference. It was nothing but Holy Spirit led. We'll talk about that one day. And this one guy, he was like, I have to prophesy to you. Like I could just tell it was something in him. He said, I have to talk to you. And I said, okay. So he prophesied. And one of the things he prophesied, he said, I saw you as a little girl sitting on your bed with your knees up. He said, and you had a book. This man don't know nothing about me. And in that moment, he started talking to me about the presence of God. So back then, I'm sure that's what that was. That feeling of just comfort and peace and this, because it was a lot of other things that had went on during my childhood, and I don't really want to talk about those things today, but you guys get the point. And so it was like I had a relationship with God. We went to church every Sunday. We went to Bible study every Tuesday. I knew who God was. I knew who Jesus was. I had my Bibles, right? Like I had like my little y'all know, like the little cartoon Bible. I remember that the beginner's time or beginning of time. I forgot, but it's like a cartoon Bible that all the kids get. And so I had my Bible. I enjoy reading it and learning it and, whatever. And so when we got in high school, we stopped going to, when I got in high school, my mom stopped going to a certain church. Y'all, this is going to all lead up. This is going to make sense. So I stopped going to a certain church. So then I went into we started going to a different church in the community. And this was more of I like this approach. The pastor, like what he talked about, and he has passed away now, right? Rest in peace to him, but amazing pastor. And so obviously for me, high school was a huge transition point because it's like you're heading into college and this, that, and the third. So this is where we're getting into the meat of today, the lost but found. This is all precursor. And so when I got to college, I went to a Catholic institution. So Jesuit, like the Jesuits, the Jesuit Catholic Church. That was what was on campus. And so church was like super far away. So I just stopped going to church. So this is where my relationship with God started to kind of like distance, right? One, because I wasn't really going to church. Second, I wasn't in communion with my family. I wasn't talking to my family. There was a lot of things that had happened that I knew it was nothing but the Spirit of the Lord speaking through a teacher I have never had before. When she told me, she said, I don't care what loans you have to get. She said, you cannot go to college and stay in that house. You have to stay on campus. So do whatever it is that you have to do. She's like, you would better invest in yourself now and have peace throughout your college years than to stay in that house. And so I took her advice. And when I say literally, I used to call her Wacky Walzaki. If she ever sees this, Miss Walzak, I appreciate you. I appreciate you because people don't realize how integral teachers are, how integral leaders are. Just people you meet along the, they say one little thing. But Wacky Walzaki, she was on point. And like I told y'all, I never had her as a teacher, but I talked to everybody and we created like this relationship. Wow, I remember one year for my birthday, I didn't get anything from my mom. And when I came in one day to say hey to her, she had bought me a cookie cake. Isn't it amazing how in God you lack nothing? He will move other people to feel what some people aren't. I was not supposed to be crying like this. This is not supposed to be going all through this. Okay, so Wacky Wazaki, shout out to you. So anywho, I'm on college campus. I'm not really talking to my family like that because the support wasn't there. Right? It was a lot of stuff that had went on. And I wasn't being understood. And I'm at the age where it's like I need peace. But that was also something that created a larger void. Because remember, there was always something in me that was seeking something. And then so as I got older, right? And then it's like this whole thing with my family. Now that's another void. Because now I'm on a campus that's predominantly white. And I'm thrown into what would most people culturally will deem a culture shock. And then I'm thrown into these science courses with people who have been geniuses their whole lives. So just imagine. I was going through a lot mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. But romantically, it was the same thing because I noticed something. Like, I've always been a beautiful girl. And I didn't see myself as beautiful back then, but now I can say that. But back then I didn't. But I've always been a beautiful girl. And so with that, a lot of guys would be attracted to me. But I would notice something. It's like once we would sit and hang out and I'm always myself. So I would be myself. It was like, she's super nerdy. Like how I was, I guess, didn't match my body. Apparently, if you have a certain body shape, you should be a certain way. That's how it was back then. I don't know how they do it now, but this is my truth and I'm living it out. And so I started thinking like, well, maybe I'm the issue, right? Far from that, but that's what I was thinking. And so this is where we get into the meat of today's topic, lost but found. So all of those things that happened before this point was leading me on a different path because I had a void. And I remember in the fall of 2015, I had it. I just had a bad day. I was like, man, I'm so frustrated. So I was talking to one of my close guy friends, and he had called me, and I was talking to him. I was like, I'm just struggling, this, and third. He was like, he said, long story short, he was talking about, he said, I got that loud pack. I didn't know what that loud pack was. I didn't know what that was. I'm like, what is that? Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, this will like, ease your, worries. Y'all know what I'm talking about. People that know what I'm talking about. And I was like, what? So that was the day that I started smoking weed. So that right there, I think, was another thing, because it created a larger void. Because the more you use something, you become addicted to it. But the more you become addicted to something, the greater the void you feel. So mind y'all, I'm talking about voids on top of voids on top of voids, but then adding in the romantic stuff. That's why I mentioned that. So during this time period in the fall of 2015, I'm dating like different guys, whatever. And I keep getting the same reaction. So now I'm frustrated. Like, cause I said like, when am I going to find the person for me? Like, this is so irritating, whatever. I said, you know what? And I said this out loud, and I said, maybe I'm not meant to date men. Maybe I'm meant to date a woman. I just threw it out there and left it alone. Fast forward, spring of 2016. Y'all hear me talking in terms of semesters. That's how you know this was during college. Spring of 2016, I met a person. I met a female, and that's what that was. 4 years of my life. So what I'm saying is it all started from me being younger, being in a place where I already came into the world feeling a void. The one that gave birth to me was not the one that protected and nurtured and took care of me. From a child's perspective, I was missing something. Then I was very isolated just by nature, just who I am as a person, right? And so along with that, I fostered a relationship with God, but I also felt not accepted by classmates and things like that because I was just so different, And that's not to say my friends and stuff weren't cool with me. No. But it's like there was always just this hidden nature about me. I don't know how to describe it, right? And then family issues compounded onto school issues, going into a new climate, all of these things, right? So I'm sure some of you are resonating with this. It's not me just spilling out my life story, but it's me living my truth, honestly. And I just want to say this to someone as like an interjection. Some of y'all may feel like, well, why would I share personal parts of my life? Or why would I do this and this, that, and the third? I said that to God when he called me. And when I say I have been the most free by living my truth. Now, there are certain things about me people probably will never know, except the ones that's like super close to me, right? It's certain things that people will not know. But the things that make me true, authentic, and genuine, right? It's my story. It's my testimony. Those are the things that I went through. And so someone out there, maybe the Lord has been speaking to you about being more open about what you went through and how he brought you through it. You don't know who you're going to help out of a pit. You don't know who you're going to help out of a storm by being obedient and doing what it is that the Lord needs you to do. And so I just wanted to say that there. But anywho, back to what I'm saying. So now you guys see the void. Now we're smoking weed. The void is deeper. The issues with the guys. Now the void is deeper. And so then it's like now the void is deeper. So if you're noticing a connection, there's literally a positive correlation. There's a relationship between the void getting bigger, but also where I'm headed. So instead of turning towards God, I'm turning towards things that are not of God. Because the thing about the void, you seek things temporarily to fill it. But those temporary things only make it greater, right? And so this is where I found myself, the same sex relationship, the smoking, the weed, all of this stuff, right? So that was how I got on the path of the lost. And I started behaving in ways that wasn't true to who I was. I started being a little bit more mean. Now, when I talk to dudes, I was normally like, when they first try to talk to me, I was normally kind of like mean by nature. But it was like a cute mean, like, oh, she thinks she cute, like, whatever, right? But I became like literal mean, like with some things. I was still happy, bubbly, sunray, right? But I was just a lot more like rigid, like when inside there was this voice inside of me that was like, that's not you. But I used the weed, I used my situation, I used my circumstances to push that voice down. And so as I continued to walk on this path of getting lost, I started having anxiety. I started experiencing extreme anxiety. And when I say anxiety, I mean like debilitating anxiety. Like it was so bad. And the only thing that could calm me down was smoking weed, right? And so the best way that I can describe my life during that time is I was a zombie walking through life. I knew I had a void or carried around a void that nothing could fill, but I ignored it. And I continued to be happy-go-lucky, sunray. Oh, everything's fine. Everything's good. But if I can be honest with y'all, I was a high-functioning, depressed person. When I say high-functioning, like I was able to do everything with a smile on my face, blah, 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 blah. But not knowing that I was really struggling on the inside. Even the person I was in a relationship with, I'm sure they couldn't tell that I was really struggling on the inside, right? And then when you're in a relationship, you begin to have to face certain things from your past, certain traumas and things of that sort. So it was just so much. And none of that led me back to God. So I was really lost. And it wasn't until one day I was in my office. This was when I was working as a chemistry lab technician at the university back home in Milwaukee. I remember one day I was on the phone with one of my friends and I told her, I said, okay, girl, I'm gonna call you back. My thoughts started racing. I was like working on, I think I was making solutions for a lab. Maybe I was making bromothymol blue, which is a indicator. I don't know why that just came to mind, but I think that's what I was doing. I was making an indicator so that the intro to chem students could test their solutions, right? So I'm making this, and you have to be very focused when you're dealing with chemicals. But my mind was just racing. It was so many thoughts. It was in that one moment that I said, God, I just want all of these thoughts to stop. And I'm going to say it without saying it. That thought popped into my mind because that's the way to just make it all stop. But it was something that quickly shut that down. Like, girl, what? And so it was in that moment I realized something's seriously wrong with me. Because why can't I calm myself down? Why are my thoughts going so crazy? Why is this? And that was when, and I know some people feel a way like about certain music or whatever, but I'm gonna be real. There were certain songs that helped me through that time. And so there's an artist, Janae Aiko, and it was a lyric that she said, you have gotta lose your mind just to find your peace of mind. You have gotta trust the signs. Everything will turn out fine. So why aren't you smiling? So she said, you have gotta lose your mind just to find your peace of mind. So she said, you have got to lose your mind just to find your peace of mind. I used to sing that lyric all the time. But in that moment, I realized I'm losing my mind. And the only way I can get out of this is finding peace. So without actually agreeing with her lyric, I realized that was true. I had to lose my mind to find my peace of mind. Because in that moment, everything started to become clear. it was that one moment that really started everything else, because I started having moments where I would just wake up. And when I say wake up, I mean spiritually wake up. Like, why am I working here? My life is I'm supposed to be somewhere else. I'm supposed to be doing something else. I'm not supposed to be in this relationship with you. I'm not really gay. What is this? Like, all of these things were just coming up. And so that was when the Lord began to find me, because he began to stir up my spirit. So I didn't know that's what he was doing. Because remember, I knew God my whole life. I was saved, sanctified, delivered, all this other stuff, right? So I knew God, but I didn't know God. So in that moment, it was like someone was shaking my spiritual box. Like, hey, it's time to wake up. You've been doing things the wrong way for so long, but it's time to wake up. And eventually, right, it came to a point where I was sitting down with some physicians. I've told this before, but I was sitting down with some physicians and I was having a conversation with them about medical school, October of 2019. And it was during that session of talking to them helping me plan out my future, that the Lord spoke to me and said, it's time for you to quit your job. And I'm like, what? First of all, who is this talking to me? And what? But the voice was just so clear. And from there, it was the Lord pulling me out of the same-sex relationship and everything like that. So though I was so lost, though I had become someone I wasn't, though I started doing all of these things, it was in me being lost that I was truly found. Because when I was in God, I didn't appreciate how much of a value it is to have the Lord on my side. I didn't appreciate how much of a value it was to have a true relationship with God, and to love God, and to know God, and to appreciate him, and to know, like, God, there's people out there that don't have you with them. It's people out there that don't have internal conviction, that don't have internal chastisement. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. Internal chastisement. Like, they don't know what it's like to do something, but to have you come in and say, my daughter, there's a better way. They don't know. They don't have someone telling them, hey, this is how you create this content. This is how you do it. There's people out there that don't have that. But I didn't know God, right? So back then I didn't value that connection. And so pretty much what I'm trying to say is that you could even say that even back then, when I knew God, when I was worshiping God, and I put in air quotations, when I knew God, when I was worshiping God, when I was going to church, when I was singing in a choir, doing all of these things, I was still lost. And it took me to literally go so far left for me to finally get right. It took for me to go so far left to finally get right. And it was in that moment where I was lost, but the Lord, he found me. And not only did he find me, but it's like those commercials with the Dawn where they take like the dirty, the ducks that have been, that have all of that oil on them, and they take them and they clean them up. That's what the Lord did to me. He took his hands, and he as pure as God is, and he pulled me out of the filth. And it was a slow pull, because remember, things slowly were falling out of me as I came closer and closer to him. So as he's drawing me closer and closer to him, every sin, every this, every that, every bandage, every wound was being healed. Every bandage was being removed. Every thought process that was not of God was being struck down. It was a process to bring me so close to him, to focus on him, and then him beginning to show me. And then that was when I realized, God, I never knew myself. So even when I was following the world's way of who am I? What's my identity? That was never me. I had the essence. I had parts of it, right? But God, you revealed it all to me. You did. And so I want to say to someone out there that's listening to this episode, you may find yourself in a place where you are just like me. You are lost. Well, let me tell you, ain't no mountain high enough. Ain't no valley low enough. And ain't no river wide enough to get God from getting to you, babe. Ain't no mountain high, ain't no valley, no. Ain't no river wide enough for him to go and find you. Literally. My lowest point turned into the summit of my life. Listen to that clearly. My lowest point was actually the summit of my life. My lowest point was my highest point. What? Only God can do something. That's an onomatopoeia. But only God can do something like that. The lowest point, the highest point. And I said onomatopoeia because there was a song I used to listen to back in college that used to say that. But that was actually a juxtaposition. But we're not here for the literary definitions, the literary devices and terms. But so yeah, like what? My lowest point was my highest point. So I want to tell someone today, the Lord will make your lowest point your highest point. I didn't know fully what God was doing as he was drawing me closer to him. Let me tell you, hindsight is so much better than foresight. I wasn't fully aware of that which the Lord was doing, but I didn't need to be. All I needed to do was to trust his lead and to keep walking forward. And so for someone out there today, that is what you need to hear about your process. You need to know that, hey, not only is the Lord with me, but he is leading and guiding me closer and closer to him. He is leading and guiding me closer and closer to him. And as I come closer to him, whatever is not like him falls off. It's no effort. Like, I'm not saying it's not some things that you just have to work at, but I'm saying for the most part, the beginning of my walk with God, it was really no effort. It was me giving things to God and him removing them. Smoking weed so much and crying out, God, make me sick of this. And he actually a month later made me sick from it. And so it was like, I was like, oh, I can't, the smell of weed, only God did that. And that was purposeful too, because now I'm out here in LA. You go outside, it smell like loud everywhere you go. Like for real. And I'm like, wow, God, he knew where I was headed. So he knew what could no longer be a part of me. And so I think that's the other part too, is when I was back in college and I had that moment like with the boys and all of that and started smoking weed, I had stopped trusting God and I stopped listening to him. Because when I tell you there were so many miracles the Lord worked for me when I was in college. So it was showing that the Lord was still with me, and I would pray to him and I would talk to him. It wasn't a super close relationship, but during that time, it became too much with the guys and this. That's why I started smoking weed and whatever. At that moment, I stopped trusting God and listening to him. Who would have known that it would be almost 3-4 years later when the Lord would say, okay, you don't went far away enough. It's time for you to get back in alignment. Because who I am at my core, I am a lover, I am a giver, I am a cherisher, a nurturer, I am a comforter, right? That anger, that angry girl, that frustration, that wasn't me. And it's like no matter all the dark things that I went through, God's light was still in me. I know some people who have been through bad things and they turn into what they've been through. So I knew that it was the Lord preserving me for even the purpose that I have in this earth right now, to literally be not just sun ray, but to be a sun ray, a ray of God's light. Amen. And so y'all already know how we do. Let's pray together. Dear Lord, my Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for this intimate moment today. Father, I pray that as I was vulnerable about my truths and transparent about what it is that you brought me through, oh God, that it causes not only your children to to look at their lives introspectively, but to also see just how much you've been there, but also just to see that no matter how far away they've strayed, that they can't get away from you. There's no mountain that's too high. There's no valley that's too low. There's no river that's too wide, God, that you would not cross, that you would not come down from your heavenly throne to locate and to find us. So, Father, for your daughter or son out there right now that is in a position, oh God, where they are struggling, in their sin, where they are struggling to come back to you, where they are struggling against prayerlessness, where they are struggling against having discipline in the word and over their flesh, and even just desiring a relationship with you. Oh Lord, I pray that you come in, oh God, and you give them your comforting presence. But also, Lord, I pray that your glory comes in and that it begins to radically transform those things that they cannot do on their own. Father, your word says that your strength is made perfect in our weakness. So, Father, may they come before you exactly as they are, knowing that you accept them just as they are, that you don't require them to change, because as we draw closer to you, Father, our closeness in you automatically causes a transformation, automatically causes a metamorphosis. So, Father, for those people who feel alone, may you remind them, oh God, of the many times that you have been with them, and even that now in this moment, oh Lord, that you are with them. Father, strengthen them and uphold them and uplift them in your mighty right hand, oh God. Father, I pray in Jesus' mighty name, oh Lord, that stagnation is broken, that delay is broken, that Father, that this session, that this episode, that it is the episode that shall push them, propel them into who and what it is that you have called them to be. Because realizing they may have been lost, but they're not so lost, oh Lord, that they can't be found. Father, I thank you for their presence here today. I thank you for their obedience, even the people that did not want to click on this. I thank you, oh Lord, that your presence has drawn them in. And I pray, oh God, that they never leave from your dwelling place. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen and amen. I love you all so much, and I thank you guys for tuning in with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.